Jackson's Thriller album in December of that year.
Thriller was a record that just took everybody by surprise.
Audiences went wild over the album. Within a month, Thriller reached gold and then platinum. In February 1983, Jackson's single Billie Jean became the most popular song in the country and around the world.
Throughout Michael's youth, there were always Billie Jeans. Basically women who would write him letters, and there was one in particular who was writing to him and telling him that she was going to kill herself and that he was the father of her child, and Michael was just horrified by all this.
Michael's ode to Billie Jean was just the beginning.
There were 9 songs on that album. Each one could have been a top 10 hit on its own. 7 of them did become top 10 hits, and the videos created for those songs were groundbreaking.
Michael's most famous video, Thriller, paid tribute to the classic horror films he loved, like The Wolfman and Night of the Living Dead. But the video didn't square with Jackson's religion, which forbids members from delving into the supernatural.
Michael was contacted by Jehovah's Witness officials who said, wait a second, you can't do this. And we're going to kick you out of the religion if this comes out.
Jackson tried to pull the plug on Thriller, but record company executives didn't want to dump the costly 20-minute film.
Michael's attorney said, listen, there was part of just having fun. I think that we could put something at the beginning of Thriller, a disclaimer that will say, I don't believe in the occult. And Michael accepted that.
Jackson knew when to compromise and when to play hardball. That spring, Motown head Berry Gordy asked Jackson to perform with his brothers for a Motown 25th anniversary special. Jackson told Berry he'd do it on one condition.
In order to get Michael Jackson to get on stage with his brothers and do a Motown medley, he had to agree to allow Michael to do Billie Jean.
When this man broke into Billie Jean, it was absolute pandemonium. People were coming out of their clothes, wigs were going crooked, people were standing on the tables.
And it was the first time we saw the moonwalk, and it was the first time the hat got thrown out, and it was the first time that we saw all of the components of what Michael had been working on to turn himself into sort of this amazing Sinatra, Gene Kelly, Michael Jackson kind of character. And Michael Jackson claimed his place in pop history as the king of pop with his performance of Billie Jean on Motown 25.
Meanwhile, Thriller sold 51 million copies and became the best-selling album of all time. To top it off, in June 1983, Michael made his ultimate declaration of independence. The 24-year-old king of pop fired his dad.
Joe Jackson had taken Michael as far as Michael thought he could be taken by Joe, and he needed stronger management and a different vision. Plus, he needed to get away from Joe Jackson.
The move devastated Joe.
Joe was looking out for the boys, and some of his decisions were decisions that served Michael very well in the end. Had he not gotten the boys away from Motown, they would not have had the opportunity to develop as songwriters and producers.
But Michael seemed incapable of cutting off all contact with the Jacksons. That September, Catherine begged Michael to reunite with his brothers for their upcoming Victory Tour.
His mother appealed to him, your brothers need to work and they really want you to do this, and your father wants you to do it, and you love your brothers, don't you?
Michael agreed to do the tour. He also signed on to make 2 commercials for the tour's sponsor, Pepsi-Cola. The endorsement deal totaled a record-breaking $5 million. But things went wrong while he was shooting the spot. Some faulty pyrotechnics exploded.
To prove that anything that starts out bad is going to end up bad, Michael got involved in this sort of explosive incident where his hair caught on fire.
Michael suffered third-degree burns. Yet even as paramedics rushed him to the ER, the master showman put on a show.
He made sure he had the glove and everything, in place while he was waving goodbye to people from the stretcher with the bandage around his head. And it was all real dramatic.
By February 1984, 25-year-old Jackson recovered enough to attend the Grammys. Thriller swept the ceremony, winning a record-breaking 8 awards.
I remember at some point backstage seeing Michael cradle all of these Grammys, and it was just a magical moment. I mean, everyone there, from the cameramen to support crew and the other artists, everyone involved knew that this was something special.
Jackson's date, 19-year-old Brooke Shields. But Michael also brought a third wheel, 12-year-old Emmanuel Lewis, star of the TV show Webster.
I guess because Emmanuel Lewis was really the date that night. Well, I think that Brooke just constantly wanted Michael's attention all to herself. From what I've been told by sources, as I say, were there and watched it all.
Jackson met Lewis on the set of Thriller and reportedly showered his entire family with lavish presents. Michael had other young friends too, including Sean Lennon and actor Corey Feldman. Feldman gave Jackson his phone number on the set of The Goonies.
Like around 11 o'clock at night, he called me, and we spoke for about 2 hours on the phone. And I was just so happy, you know. This guy actually called me, we actually spoke, and, you know, he invited me to his house, and he wrote my phone number in his little book, and, you know, we were friends. It was official.
Corey was thrilled to join Michael's inner circle.
But for the next several years of my life, I just became all-encompassed in this man. It was like the power he had over me was unexplainable. I wanted to act like him. I wanted to talk like him. I wanted to dance and sing like him. I wanted to breathe like him. And I'd never experienced that, ever, in any part of my life. So of course I was swept off my feet. Of course I was awestruck. You know, it was love. It was magic.
But the magic didn't last forever.
As with most children in his life, he kind of grew distant as I got older.
In fact, several years would pass before the paths of Corey Feldman and Michael Jackson converged again. Meanwhile, Michael continued to hang out with his young pals as he prepared for the upcoming Victory Tour.
These guys had to get it together, and they had to get it together fast. Michael hadn't performed or rehearsed and all that stuff with his brothers for years. And there was some animosity behind the scenes.
Despite plenty of advance hype, the Victory Tour bombed.
They went into a lot of stadiums that kept audiences from really appreciating the performance and the music. And they didn't perform a lot of the new music. They just stayed with basically an old show that they had done as the Jacksons.
The Victory Tour spelled defeat for the Jacksons, but for Michael, it meant liberation. The King of Pop had better things to do. Coming up, Dangerous Liaisons.
I brought my attention to the number of times children were staying in Michael's bedroom.
And later,
I got calls from all over the world to tell me what people knew about Michael Jackson.
In March 1985, Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in London honored Michael Jackson with a life-size replica. Michael reigns supreme as the King of Pop. In September 1986, Michael broke more records when Pepsi paid him a cool $10 million to perform in 3 TV commercials.
This is a great honor. Thank you, Mr. Enrico.
Michael's deal with Pepsi was the biggest endorsement deal to date at that time. And it was significant for a couple of reasons. One, Pepsi had decided to hinge their fortunes onto a pop star. Number two, this was a black man. In the African American community, that was a triumph.